So welcome back to Zombie Squad Cast. In this episode, I have Simon Phillips, a well-known actor, and I see you have 2 series on Amazon Prime now.
I've got 3 actually on Prime
3
right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got Dystopia and a show called No Easy Days, and then our big one that we're kind of plugging at the moment, which is Age of the Living Dead, which is a sort of post-apocalyptic vampire series.
I've seen a lot of. I've actually seen a lot of promos for Age of the Living Dead and even Dystopia, and so that was No Easy Days. I think I want to look into as well. But
well,
yeah.
No Easy Days is a bit more set in the real world, if you like it, whereas Dystopia and Age of the Living Dead have that sort of post-apocalyptic feel. No Easy Days is a bit more just regular. I mean, it's still about hijacking the White House. I mean, it's probably still a little unusual, but it's not as unusual as some of the sci-fi we do.
Sure. Yeah. No. So No Easy Days, you're saying similar to maybe Olympus Has Fallen, White House Down, those sort of things?
Very similar, very similar, just in series form. I will say that we started ours before they started theirs.
Okay.
So we didn't copy. We made a couple of British movies called He Who Dares, which is about, it was in England, but it was about the Prime Minister's daughter getting kidnapped and held for ransom.
Okay.
And then we made a follow-up movie to that called He Who Dares 2. And then basically the Americans came along and said, we like this. Could we make it into a series though? And then we made No Easy Days from that.
Same characters, same universe?
So the first story was the sort of Prime Minister and his daughter getting kidnapped. So what we did was we just made it American. We made it the president and his the president's daughter being the first daughter being kidnapped. But I played the same bad guy in each iteration of it. In fact, I'm the only person that carried through all of those things.
So is it the same character having gone after the Prime Minister and the U.S. president?
Oh no, I beg your pardon. No, it's sort of like a reboot.
Yeah. Right. You played a reboot of your own character.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is great because it means that the first couple of movies are like a big dress rehearsal.
Right. And you're familiar with the character.
Yes. And somebody's like, did you do any work for this? And I'm like, not really, no. I didn't do any prep for this whatsoever because I'd already done 2 movies. And they were like, yeah, just the same, but we'll set it in America. They're like, brilliant. And I was like, can I still be British? And they're like, oh yeah, a bad British guy, that's fine. They're like, brilliant. Don't even have to do the accent. Love it.
Exactly. And I remember with Age of Living Dead when all the promos were coming out on Instagram.
Right.
You guys came up with this really cool idea where the way Instagram works, you released a section of the big poster. And so it was little sections, maybe every day or every week or something. But then if you went to the gallery view of that Instagram's pictures, they all pieced together. And that's what really stood out. And I think with that,
I saw someone else doing it with not a poster, but with something else. And I thought I must try and replicate this. And just to highlight what you were just talking about there, you probably can't see it, but it's split up into like several posts, but so you'd have to be on my page or the company page to appreciate it a little bit, because otherwise it looks like you're just getting one fraction of the screen. But,
exactly. Yeah. And that was, I thought that was an incredible branding trick. And of course I sent that to my colleagues. I got a couple colleagues. One is big into music and branding. Another one's big into music, acting, and comedy. I'm big into acting and crew and film work, writing and directing. And so we kind of collaborate on a whole bunch of different little independent projects and, some big projects as well. We got lucky enough to do some big stuff in the DC area where I'm at. But nice. I saw that and I said, wow, somebody came up with the coolest little trick utilizing it. Obviously it's very Instagram specific, I think, unless that gallery view works another way.
No. Yeah, it's an Instagram. It's an Instagram trick, but it's Look, in this modern sort of technology world, you have to sort of be on top of those things. You want to
Hmm.
grab people's attention, you gotta employ these these little life hacks.
Exactly. Thank God my buddy is the media branding, social media kind of guru, hashtags and
Yeah,
how
yeah. I
how
mean, you've
to
got to do all that. I don't do any of that. People are like, you got to Simon, you got to start hashtagging. But I'm like, I'm old, man. So sort of. I'm like, yeah, yeah. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, same here. So, obviously we're all quarantined. We're all sheltered in place and shut in. So, being a professional actor and maybe further on, I think you're also a producer and director as
That's
well.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, how it goes without asking, how have you been impacted? We'll start professionally. How have you been impacted by this whole shut in?
Well, it's like everybody, you got to sort of adjust the way you're working. We were very lucky in that some of the shows, we had just finished work shooting on Age of the Living Dead season 2. So
Okay.
we actually had a whole show in post production with editors. But I mean, normally we'd be with the editor in the room, but now we have to use Zoom. We have to use these sort of apps to sort of see what the editor can see, and we're sort
Hmm.
of talking over these sort of like Skype and things like this. And everything's got to be a lot more remote. But we were pretty lucky because it could have happened in the middle of the shooting, which would have been a real pain. But we happened to actually just finish shooting. So we had a movie to finish and we had a TV show finish, so they were both in post. So we were pretty lucky.
Yeah.
So lots of my days involved looking at edits and commenting on edits and stuff like that. As far as the acting goes, obviously I'm not doing any acting at the moment till we get back out there. But I've been keeping myself busy producing. As I'm sure, as you know, as a fellow filmmaker, producing is kind of what takes up 90% of the time anyway.
Yep.
Sort of. So it happened at a good time for us, and we had lots to catch up on in post. So that was good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have two series, and they're set in, different superhero universes. And we got lucky that we wrapped a lot of production, a lot of shooting in January and February. And I had a couple of acting gigs, throughout March, and a couple of crew gigs throughout March. And then I think it was March 12th. My gig on March 12th was, you know, canceled early. We were
Yeah,
on we were,
yeah,
we were on set working it, but they were like, got to go home, strike it all,
yeah,
and go home. But luckily, I had so much in the can, like you were saying, that was all of March. I think maybe a little bit of April, all of March, just editing, baby, editing,
yeah,
wife and baby, editing, wife, editing, and just banging stuff out. And and again, you mentioned production hacks, and
yeah.
the way this show is produced, and I could send you a link to it later. The way this show's produced, it's very low budget, very very simply produced in such a way that we're
Yeah.
able to bang out more content. And then the editing obviously is more formulaic, to where it's just like once I get sort of a cookie cutter for the first episode, it's just place
Then
it.
you
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
And
I find the same thing that once when doing a show, once the pilot is set, you set a lot of things in the pilot: the style, the
mhm,
way you're going to cut it, even the sort of characters that you're sort of going to focus a bit more on. Sometimes that reveals itself in the edit. Once you have a pilot that everyone, whoever your execs and stuff will go, yeah, that's it. Then it does make episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, a lot easier
mhm,
because you don't have. But yeah, people talk about this low budget stuff all the time to me, and we're in that sort of market as well. Uh, ideas are free in some way, and we've all seen movies where the idea is so goddamn simple. You're like, that's genius. Whoever did that, you're like, you look at a trailer. And it's just, you don't even have to see the movie, but you appreciate that it's low budget. But you go, doesn't matter. That is such a genius idea. Like I'm annoyed I didn't think of it. Sort of it's so obvious in other ways. So I think, yeah, I mean, even though productions can be small. You know, the technology right now is totally on our side for the low budget filmmaker. You can do anything at the moment, you know, so you can give Hollywood a run for its money on a laptop now. You know, you just have to have the time and the skill to do it, which is what we should all be working on in this sort of lockdown. Is like these people that say they can't make things right now kind of annoy me a little bit, because you're like, I mean, I'm sure you're like this yourself, Glenn, but like, you know, you be productive, do something that, you know, sort of that's going to help you when the lockdown eases. Do something, catch up on something, or generate some viral marketing for stuff that you have already online. You know, like there's a thousand different ways a filmmaker, you know, nobody is going to be a filmmaker if they give up at the first hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those things. It's like that's just being a film producer in general. Your day is triaging a bunch of really big problems. You know, there's always a fire to put out, and the lockdown is just a big fire. And you're like, right, well, we have to get around that. We have to work around it. We have to concentrate on editing, or concentrate on writing the next project, or putting it to, I don't know what, you know, what make use of this time. Anybody that says they can't work right now in the filmmaking game is just kidding themselves. There's loads to be done, because there's plenty to be done. You know, like whether that's editing stuff you've already shot, or writing stuff that you will shoot again, even knowing what the sort of post-lockdown world is going to look like you say, production hacks, work around it, use it to your advantage, because as soon as this lockdown ends, I guarantee you there'll be some low budget filmmaker who has made a movie or has prepped a movie or something in this time, and he'll get massive success, because all of these Hollywood movies, they got shut down, right? You know, sort of, so there's this big gap in the market coming, not right now, but very soon. There'll be like 2 or 3 months down the line, Hollywood is going to run out of the big movies, meaning that the low budget independent filmmakers like ourselves get a chance, you know, because they need Netflix, Amazon, all these guys, they need content every week. They need new things all the time. And if the Hollywood isn't available, then they come to us and go, hey, what do you got? What's the best indie movie out there right now? And then Absolutely. We've got our chance to, you know, sort of take the limelight.
And what people don't realize is that it's events like this, maybe not exactly like a viral outbreak, quarantine, but it's major events. The Roaring '20s may have sparked talkies, as they called them, which were films with sync sound. And the Roaring '20s was this huge explosion of a social rebellion, you know, looser times, and then the Depression happened. And so with the Depression, and then with the Depression, there was some different sort of material that came out, and I'm not too familiar with that material, but obviously World War II had a major impact on filmmaking, and a lot of the style of film, bigger budgeted stuff, a lot of the Hollywood films could be looked at as propaganda, war propaganda films.
For sure, yeah.
And then moving up to the new avant-garde, which I think was in the '60s, a lot of French influence, '60s and '70s with the hippie time, anti-war time. A lot of that work was very more violent and thrusting, real world stuff in people's faces. It was R-rated, language and imagery that would have never. I mean, Hitchcock was rough for the '30s and '40s, and then the stuff in the '60s and '70s was getting worse. And then you got Reaganomics, and then you got Reaganomics in the '80s, and you got racial tensions in the '90s, and every decade had this not surplus, but this huge influence of an influx of a different grandeur impact, not grandeur budget, but just a bigger impact on filmmaking.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like I'm lucky. I grew up in a time where I grew up in the '80s and the '90s, and I saw the Teen Wolves and the Back to the Futures. I saw the Friday the cheap indie Friday the 13th, but then the bigger budgeted, more special effects Nightmare on Elm Streets. And then in the '90s, for me, the three big films for me was Heat with Pacino and De Niro.
Oh wow, yeah.
Reservoir Dogs, and I should say four: Heat, Reservoir Dogs, Swingers, and Rumble in the Bronx. So
Oh wow.
there was, you know, Jackie Chan's way of working around a budget, and you know, okay, I'll do my own stunts, do my own fighting. We're getting busted up, you know, a couple $1,000s, you know, in the hospital, get our faces fixed up or some broken bones fixed up, but it's not, you know, $1 million budget. It's probably
No, yeah.
it's probably $100,000 budget on a film, and then maybe another $50,000 in medical bills. So that's $150,000 instead of $500,000, right?
Yeah, but it's cheaper all around. Yeah.
And you know, then you had Swingers, which was still to me one of the best guy flicks ever made. Hilarious, great storytelling, great characters. And Vince Vaughn's joke was, because he was on Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah.
The budget for Swingers was just the budget for the food on Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And they made this great buddy flick. And then you got Reservoir Dogs. Tarantino found a way to shoot a whole movie, you know, 95% of a movie in a warehouse, and it was compelling. It was intense. You really, you know, got interested in these characters. And then going back to Heat, you know, one of the greatest police epic dramas ever made, much bigger budget, but you know, but again, because these filmmakers, they have this story they want to tell, they find a way to work around it. And so I find that a lot of filmmakers, a lot of actors, producers, directors, writers are finding opportunities now. I might just be writing what we know is these big budget Hollywood scripts, but I'm going to knock out 10 of them in a month because that's all I'm doing. I'm sitting here and I'm just writing.
Right.
Or, you know, like you said, editing what we already shot, but I'm editing it now. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way, just to keep, I mean, you don't need to tell people that have that sort of mindset to keep busy because they're already busy, you know, sort of,
right.
It's everybody else that you're like, yeah, I mean, all of those filmmakers, like Swingers is a good one because of its budget, you know, sort of, it must have come up against a lot of, you know, resistance. I mean, everything is easier with a lot of money, but you know, sort of on low money, you've got to start getting clever real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why but then you celebrate the genius of that, going, yeah, you know, Swingers can go toe for toe with these big films in terms of compelling, engaging characters and story. Absolutely. You know, and you're like, and that compelling characters and compelling story really costs nothing. You're like, that's words on the script, you know, that's easy. Yes, executing it is the next big, you know, the next big way you have technology. But if you're smart, like Swingers was sort of smartly made, mm-hmm. then you know, your low budget doesn't affect your great story,
right?
You know, sort of all your characters.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Swingers came out in '96, but throughout the late '80s and early '90s, there was a lot of those Shakespearean movies where they were trying to kind of update these Shakespearean movies, kind of make it semi-modern. They had, you know, movies, the Shakespeare, I don't know, Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet or what have you, with Leo and
I was actually in one of those movies, Glenn. I was like,
which one?
My very first movie was Measure for Measure.
Measure for Measure. Okay.
And again, it was one of those like Romeo and Juliet. It was an updated Shakespeare thing, so everyone was still speaking the language, the sort of old English Shakespeare dialogue, but it was sort of filmed in a modern setting, sort of to try and make it more accessible, I guess, to a younger audience. That's what Romeo and Juliet did for people. It kind of made the Leonardo DiCaprio, the Baz Luhrmann film, made it sort of exciting again, you know,
of course.
Sort of, for a younger generation who had probably didn't engage with the play the same way they did before the movie. You know, it just made it, you know, and that's the genius of that, was the execution. You know, they had the vision for that, and you know,
because because they kind of updated it. And with Romeo and Juliet, when it came to the action, they kind of took on this, you know, the double pistol, like the killer, like the John Woo movies, and they kind of added action into it. And again, it was the '90s, so it was that LA kind of hip hop dress, beach / hip hop culture type of attitude, that South LA, or no, East LA, South Central type of look, you know, because of what movies were kind of coming out, but they kind of melded that. But those were on a bigger budget. Whereas you take Swingers could almost be like Hamlet and his no, not Hamlet, but Romeo and his boys, but Juliet doesn't want him. And so Romeo's
Yeah.
just in his modern language, modern times, and Romeo's just lost in LA, just like, what do I do in my life? And that's what Swingers really was Romeo knowing he's never going to get Juliet. And it's
Yes.
and it's Romeo, Mikey was Romeo, and Trent was but not to, talk about Swingers for hours, but they just
No, it's a great, no, one of those things is like we're always told these fairy tales like Romeo and Juliet, or the Disney movies or something like, and at the end of them you are told, I mean, the couple, they live happily ever after, and you're never really told what happens. You're just told that they're happy. And obviously then the movies got a bit more interesting because they kind of showed you, oh well, this is what happens if it doesn't work out, sort of, if life is a little it's a little less than what you expected. It's a sort of lifeless ordinary, sort of, maybe you didn't get the happy ending. Nobody really gets the happy ending, sort of. So
sure.
that's why Swingers was kind of good. I know Romeo and Juliet didn't have the happy ending, but the idea was like, oh, it's tragic. And you're like, it's tragic because of the point it's cut at, sort of, if Romeo and Juliet lived 10 years longer, they'd probably be divorced, sort of, or something, like the magic fades, but it's timing, isn't it? Sort of, it's tragic because they're young.
It's tragic because they're young, and it's also forbidden love. But does that forbidden love always last in the real world?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's so right because it's wrong type of relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how would you say you've been impacted by this personally?
Like, I mean, I'm a sort of self-motivated person, so I've just found a way to deal with the circumstance. Sort of, I work more remotely. Sort of, my life is pretty much movies. So, or TV shows anyway. And so I've just kept going. Sort of, it hasn't really stopped me. I guess I'm sort of lying a little bit, because if it goes on for 4 more months, it would start to impact me. Do you know what I mean? I think you can take the hit for a couple of months.
Yeah.
2-3 months, no problem. After that, it would probably start to impact you a little better, because you couldn't make new stuff. And as filmmakers, you got to make stuff. But sort of, I don't know, I've managed to use this time to catch up with a lot of things. Oddly, I'm talking to more people now in my family and stuff like that I haven't talked to in ages, because sort of we're forced to talk like this. So actually, arguably, I've been in touch with my family more in this time, sort of, whereas before you wouldn't have a lot of time to do that sort of stuff. So I don't know, for me, it's been nice, sort of, I get to spend a bit of time like that. So yeah, hasn't hurt me.
So, and you're based in Canada?
That's right. Yeah. So I'm from London, obviously, but I live in Canada really because I have access as well to the US. So filming in Canada is it's very cheap. I came to Canada on a job. I did a TV show, the one I was talking about there, No Easy Days, and we took 8 months to make that show, and we were here. And then we just me and my brother, who both live here, we just decided to sort of stay afterwards, because it was a sort of logical progression. They go, right, well, we'd actually done pretty much everything we could do in low budget sort of British filmmaking. We were making football hooligan movies, and we kind of reached sort of like we've done that. Like at one point we made a very successful series of movies called White Collar Hooligan, but we did like 3 of them. We kind of done it, sort of. So we did all we could there. So we had next to move to a slightly bigger audience, which is of course the United States. And so Canada was a nice sort of like foot sort of like stepping stool to film in Canada, but you could get US talent, you could get, like all the benefits of being closer to the States.
And so are they having mandated shelter in place? How strict are they in enforcing the quarantine rules, laws, etc.?
Do you know what? They're not strict where I am, but then I live sort of slightly out in the country. I don't live in this city. I'm actually about 20 kilometers outside it. But it doesn't really matter because they don't have to, because everything's closed. So you sort of have freedom, but all the bars are closed, all the restaurants are closed, the shopping mall is closed, the cinema's closed. Like freedom to go where? You know, like the beaches are closed, you know, like sort of the parks were closed. So you kind of, I mean, you probably could go anywhere, but everything's closed. So, and all of your family and friends and everything are in the same scenario. You know, they can't really go anywhere. And even if you could go to people's houses and drink with them there and eat with them there, there's this idea that you shouldn't be doing that either. And you know, you have to you have to play ball with that a little bit, you know. Sort of. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to the world reopening so I can go to the pub today. Glenn, today's actually my birthday. I'm 40
Yep.
years old today. So I was looking forward to having obviously, but before this, I was looking forward to having a drink and a party and so on and so forth. And
Sure.
I won't get that today, sort of. So, but I'll have to get it when the world opens up again.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. And I feel your pain. I turned 40 in March, and we were
Which end of March? Because if it was on the 5th of March, you're okay.
It was after the 5th.
Ah, so there you go. You see, if it's anything after like the 10th or something, stuff got weird after the 10th of March.
Yeah, it was right before things started getting weird, but you know, me and the wife kind of saw it coming. Plus, you know, we brought home the kids, so I said, you know, forget it. We'll run to the beer and wine store, and she just promised she wouldn't give me a hard time for getting a little extra blitzed than normal. So that was my that was my gift, was not nagging me for getting a little extra blitzed on my birthday. But we had been trapped in the house with each other, starting. Well, you know, I stayed with her in the hospital nonstop after the kid, because again, you know, being full-time freelancers, I guess you could consider yourself somewhat of a freelancer.
Sure.
But I've been a full-time freelancer, I don't know, for 10, 15 years, 10, maybe really more 10 years now. And so I said, you know, I won't take any gigs. I let everybody know. I let all my, you know, colleagues and partners know, hey, the kid's coming today and blah, 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 blah. So stayed with her in the hospital, and we were just in each other's face the whole time for 3-4 days in the hospital, came home. And like I said, had a couple of gigs, but yeah.
You know, sort of, you got to prioritize at that point, right? What's more important?
Yeah. And a friend of my wife's turned 50. She turns 50 Saturday. So, you know, they're all coming up with unique ideas. Everybody shot selfie videos and then Dropbox into somebody to splice this huge video card to her.
And I literally just had that today. I had like all a friend of mine who's actually the director on the show, Paul Tanter, on the director on the 3 TV shows that I've mentioned, spliced together a whole lot of video messages from like my family and my friends. It was a wonderful surprise to wake up to. I just got tagged in this video, you know, sort of. And I was like, oh wow, they had just everybody on it, sort of. Yeah. It's a new inventive way of doing it, isn't it? Sort of people that can't be with each other.
And, but not only that, my wife and the rest of their friends, for the one turning 50, at a certain point, they're all timing it together, but at a certain point, they're all driving by her house and blaring the car horns. So it's kind of like an old school, right? It's kind of like an old school trick with a physical car actually driving by the house and blaring the horn. So that's kind of like an old school thing that we've been able to do for decades, on top of the modern technology. So yeah,
this is exactly what we're talking about. These production hacks, life hacks. You see, smart people will find a way. You know, they'll find a way to get around it. Like, hey, this is the environment we're stuck with, so we got to make it work.
Absolutely. So, I guess my next point is, I'm obviously going to have to start binge watching all your stuff. If it's on Prime, it's a must watch. But for you, what's a couple of a film or two, or a series, or maybe even some books that you've been, you know, binge watching, or something that a movie that you watched in the last couple of weeks that really stood out, that kind of blew you away?
Well, I've been catching up on old stuff, you know. sort of. So I've been going back to like I was in love with Stranger Things in the first season, and I've only just started watching season 2. So
Okay.
I get a lot of that things. You know, the problem is with watching stuff is I watch stuff all day long. You know, sort of
Right.
for editing and stuff like that. So often I don't want to sort of you know, watch too many things. So, you know, sort of I'm pretty slow on TV shows and movies because you know, I don't know. I've just in the lockdown I've been watching a lot of stuff in my job sort of daytime wise. So I've been pretty slow on it, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a few things. Stranger Things has been the main TV show I've seen. I have rewatched. I don't know if you know this movie by Luc Besson, Leon. It's from an early '90s.
Oh yeah.
I think it's called The Professional in America.
It was originally called The Professional, and then he redid the movie, added some deleted scenes, I guess, and rebranded it as Leon. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies. Just epic. You know, sort of Natalie Portman's first, obviously, but yeah, just epic. Yeah. So yeah, just those sort of things. Sort of. So yeah, I've still been keeping up with that, but I haven't. Yeah, Stranger Things is my sort of show, you know. So that's what I've been looking at lately. I also want to watch Ozark, and I haven't seen the latest one of that.
Yeah, everybody's talking about Ozark. You know, a couple of weeks ago, everybody was talking about Tiger King, and now everybody's talking about everybody's talking about Ozark, and another show on Netflix is called Hollywood. A lot of people have been talking about, but yeah, you know, my cue.
I missed the whole Tiger King thing. I keep seeing memes about it that are obviously about Carol Baskin or something, and I don't quite understand it because I haven't seen this. I kind of get what they're saying, but
right.
I missed the show. So and now I hear, isn't there a movie happening now?
Now there's talks of a biopic or a biopic trilogy or something. There's all sorts of stuff being talked about where it's like it'll be like a narrative biopic type of flick, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody type of production where it's it's not a documentary. Yeah, it's like a whole biopic type deal. Yeah. And it's funny you were saying, you know, a lot to catch up on, and I've always I don't know if do you remember Blockbuster? Did you have a Blockbuster or like a Hollywood Video? But you remember video rental stores?
Remember it? Love it.
Yeah. And you still got some Blockbuster. Look at that. That's phenomenal. I worked at Blockbuster for maybe 4 years in the 90s and early 2000s. And there was just always a slew of these B80s and 90s horror, sci-fi, action movies. Cynthia Rothrock type movies. Don the Dragon Wilson. Who else? Olivia Gruner. You know, like just these terrible.
That was the 90s. Was kind of a rich oil field of that stuff.
Yeah, all those we call them straight to tape B movies, and and I always kept these movies like in the covers. They found a way to make great covers for, like, you know, B movies, and these movies are so good still to me. I just love them, and so now with this free time, I'm actually jumping on these movies on Tubi or Pluto TV or Tubi, or maybe on you know, some of them are like on, you know, Hulu and Netflix, but just watching these old 90s low budget B movies and again watching these different hacks of like seeing No, go ahead.
That was how we used to have to do it, isn't it? We used to go into Blockbuster. I mean, I'm one of those kids. I would go with my brother, and we would, you know, we'd fight over what movie, you know, or our parents would let us, you know, get a couple of movies or something like that. And you would have to sort of discern a great deal of information from just the cover. You know, we didn't have the internet, so you couldn't watch a trailer. You just literally had to kind of decipher it a little bit. Is this sort of going to be the movie I want to, you know, we were smart as kids. You used to look at the ratings, so you'd see how action-y an action film was probably going to be, you know, sort of, obviously that would inform your parents' choice of whether you were allowed it. But yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful time because there wasn't really the mass marketing that there is, you know, today. Sort of, you kind of had to. I mean, other than the theatrical movies, which you'd recognize because you missed it in the cinema, or you would have seen it in the cinema. But anything else, you had to be sort of like an Inspector Clouseau and work out how good the movie was going to be from what the DVD from the what the VHS
even
cover
the
would tell you.
VHS cover. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
like you would look on the back and you read the little synopsis and see what four
yeah.
stills from the movie. So yeah, I mean, I remember even before I started working for Blockbuster, I would go in, I would get a new release, a big budget, a list, big budget movie, and then always a B movie. I would always get that B movie that I saw the cover for, just sitting there collecting dust on that shelf for years. Every time I would go in there and be like, all right, I'm finally going to pull the trigger and get, what was it? House. Remember those movies, House and House 2? And those type of movies. And oh God,
I think that's what most people did. I think there was always, I think with me and my brother, there was always like the A movie, the big thing that you could guarantee you'd like, and then the gamble movie. You're like, okay, we don't know this one. Usually the A movie, we'd already seen it, like at the cinema,
right.
but obviously in those days you couldn't instantly rewatch things on YouTube. There was your appetite wasn't really satisfied until you'd seen it again, type thing, sort of. So but then you could gamble on the other movie. This is like, well, this is the one we know we've seen and we'd enjoy, but here's one that we might not have seen. We definitely probably haven't seen it, but we might enjoy. So, and those are the ones I found little hidden gems, like ones that didn't really make it to a theatrical release, but you discovered in that sort of way. I'm a Blockbuster. I hear there's one Blockbuster left on the planet somewhere, which is still going. So just maybe it's a ceremonial store, but I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
Kids today, let me tell you something, Glenn. They will never know that. They have so much information at their fingertips all the time. They will never realize what it was like to try and decipher, whether you were going to like this movie or not without having all the information from it,
Exactly. I can't wait for my kid when he turns 10 to run the house and take over from me. I'll be more than happy to let him do it with just with like a smartphone or a laptop, and I'm sure he could make the house like a smart house, and he could at 10 probably install everything in a year. At 11, he's just running everything cooks itself, and I could just relax and maybe write something and just concentrate on writing, and the kid can just run the smart house.
Leave the technology to the kids.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
I feel very privileged anyway, because I'm a freelancer like yourself, but I have made a life of making movies, so whether people like those things or not is up to other people, but I've liked the process of doing it. So usually on your birthday you get sort of retrospective about those things, and you're like, you know what, I'm doing what I love doing. I have been doing it for the last 10 years and more than that. So I wouldn't change it, if that makes sense. Sort of,
absolutely.
I don't feel any sense of regret about that one.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I have a couple colleagues that can be critical, and I have a couple of family members or friends that might like take jabs, like is this really the game plan, and yeah, at 40 or 40 plus, and with a wife and kid, and you realize, well, I'm nowhere near where I want to be in my career. But if I was to throw it out right in front of you, I'm on TV.
Right.
You can watch all my stuff on demand. I'm on demand. I'm on Netflix. A bunch of commercials. Here, probably more or less on the eastern region of the U.S. Sure. regional stuff. But I mean, it's to come to that realization that I have made it. I haven't hugely made it, but I have made it in such a way that obviously I'm doing something right, and I'm just going to keep going and keep shooting.
That's it. Keep pushing for the big goals. I think it's important to take stock of where you are and stuff like that, and appreciate where you are, obviously, because you'll always be, you'll always someone will always be looking up to you thinking, God, I wish I had what you had. Like I wish I had that length and breadth of experience or success or however you measure that for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you will be there looking at the next thing going, this is how I need to push to get further. But I mean, as long as you're enjoying the journey, sort of, and you don't just get upset by not reaching the top goal, sort of, every little step towards you take to your goal is something to be sort of celebrated, not to get lazy about it, but, sort of to take stock and go, yeah, no, you know what, I've done a few things, and, so some of the stuff has been good, and, some of it's been bad, and some of it's been, I think, excellent, and you're kind of working all the time to improve that.
Yeah. For me, of course, I want to be set up in such a way that I'm not, God forbid something happens, I'm not leaving the wife and kid desolate. That's number one.
Sure.
But number two, it's not, it might not be Star Wars or Marvel or DC comics, but I am leaving somewhat of a legacy. I am leaving somewhat of a collection of art and content that people can be like, damn, he did that, because there's like 95% of other people that gave up, quit, just never even tried, so
it's all too easy to give up, isn't it? Sort of, I mean, there are always it's filmmaker mentality. True filmmaker mentality is obviously not to give up at any point, but anybody that didn't make it because they quit, weren't supposed to, sort of, because it's not a game of like, it's not easy. This is definitely the harder road in terms of nobody wants to be wondering how they pay rent next month, or, like sort of going, I hope I get that job, otherwise I'm going to struggle this year. Sort of nobody wants to think like that. But if you can't do anything else, like in your mind, you think, no, I mean, this is what I want to do, then you'll work 10 times harder than any guy with a 9-to-5 job who has the sort of security of that.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how much job security is going around at the moment with the world the way it is, but I suppose you have to think, if you died tomorrow, touch wood, obviously that none of us face that. But if you did, you think, right, okay, well, I might not have got to where I was going, but at least I was heading in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, I don't feel bad about the time. I didn't waste time. I was doing what I could when I could to get there. Sort of, so yeah, I think that's important for film.
For me, I think doing what you love, loving what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think quality of life and quality and just true happiness and satisfaction is better than $1 million.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I would love to have $1 million, but knowing me, I would invest it. I'd probably put some of that money to work on my projects, and I would continue to do what I do. I wouldn't just take $1 million and be like, well, I'm not gonna do anything now, but
that's what I always say to my business partners, like Paul and Ken, who like help us do a lot of what we're doing. Paul is the director, and Ken is my producer. And I always say that, like, if I won the lottery tomorrow, like, what would change? And you're like, oh, you'd buy the new car and the new house and the sort of things. And they go, okay, but when you've done all that, you're like, well, I keep making movies. Like, actually, the sort of main bit of your life after the party, you're like, they go, well, no, I'd keep doing it. And they go, why? You don't need to. And you're like, oh, right. You don't understand filmmakers if you think it's a need to because of to pay the rent. Sort of, it was never that. It was never the job I dreamed of quitting and walking away from. It was just a job that you would keep going at. So even if you had, and yes, you'd make your life easier. You'd invest some of your own lottery winnings in making a movie. Do you know what I mean? Sort of, you would do that. Absolutely. But which means that you're probably still on the right path when you wouldn't give up the thing, if money was no object.
Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, what would you say your next agenda or set of goals, your next plan, but basically your next agenda for the next month or two, or even 3?
So whilst this lockdown has been going on, I remember I told you I was a busy guy with trying to do as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We are constructing a spaceship set in Canada to film 3 movies on, because it's very expensive to build a set, as I'm sure everybody realizes.
Mm-hmm.
And a spaceship set is particularly expensive because it needs to look spaceshipy. We've been working on this for about 4 or 5 months, and the construction was nearly complete. It was sort of time to dress the shell was there. It was time to paint and dress and sort of get it sort of all operational. So I've been concentrating a lot on working with the production designer on that, another guy called Doug. And we've been finishing that up. And so as soon as the lockdown releases, we are going to work on those 3 movies.
You're right
so
over there, yeah.
We're literally, and it's thankfully it's only about 45 minutes away from where I currently live. So
Cool.
in the lockdown, I was able to go to it and see the progress, sort of a bit more. So when you're building something like that, you kind of have to go and see it. It's not quite as good over the phone or videos. You kind of need to see it and feel it yourself. So yes, that's the science fiction movies for the summer, and Age of the Living Dead season 3. So we wrapped on post for season 2 sort of shortly a while ago, but we're heading into season 3 this summer, so for a 2021 release. So yeah, lots to be thankful for, and lots of work still to do. So yeah, that's the agenda for the next 12 months anyway. It's all kind of full.
So I was a second AD on a film, and so half of it was shot in Gettysburg, but it's like an American Pie type film. It's not a war film, but half of it was shot in Gettysburg, PA, and it's like a high school comedy type film.
Oh wow, yeah.
So kind of a unique story behind this. So the writer, director, producer had the whole thing. He's Norwegian. He had a small, couple guys from Norway, cinematographers and sound guys. They all went out to LA, getting ready to shoot this. And then his fiance tells him, I'm pregnant. So he starts reworking the thing. And they decided to shoot the first 3 weeks in Norway, an American Pie, an American film, set in America.
Yeah.
With American leads. And they shot the first 3 weeks. I think all the high school stuff, most of the family stuff with all the leads. They flew everybody out to Norway so he could be right next to his wife. And during the birth, and then I think he let the first AD take over for a couple of days while he was in the hospital. And then, and I think they took, and then they took a week break, and then they switched LA to Gettysburg, and they did the second 3 weeks in Gettysburg.
Right.
And the producer, I worked with the producer a couple of times, and he said, hey, we got 3 weeks in Gettysburg. We need a second AD. And so, and I was just hearing, like incredible stories, but with this guy just, kind of bound that juggling act. And and now that I'm in the same boat, and I'm working on this stuff, learn how to type with one hand, kind of be ambidextrous. So a bit on, and just typing with one hand on a laptop. And
that's my hope, is that when all this, I have, it's always about time management anyway. Making movies is like what you prioritize first, because there's some problems that are today problems and some problems that are next week problems, and you can't ignore next week problems till next week, but you've got to spend an appropriate amount of time on what you think is the most urgent thing, sort of. So that's good training for anything, really, sort of.
Yeah, my wife thinks I'm psychotic because she'll say, okay, we have a couple of things that we need to get done, by the end of the week, and I'll stay up to 6 a.m. knocking all 3 out, so that I don't have to do anything, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
And then they're all set for Saturday. And I'm that kind of guy. She's like, we could have done this. We could have spread. And I'm like, I don't want you doing it. I don't want you doing anything.
Sure.
I can get away with, 5 hours of sleep, take an hour nap later on, 5 hours of sleep, take a 2-hour nap later on, yada, yada, yada. I want you to be well rested. And because, she's, long story short, she's a teacher. She was on maternity leave. It was just, she was more hands-on with the baby starting off, and
of course,
but now she's going to like the Zoom teaching now. But if there was something, I would spend like 5 straight hours just knocking this thing out, getting it done. And
then it's off your mind as well, isn't it? When you walk around, you think, I've got to do that. It sort of stops you enjoying anything in the meantime. You're like, I'm just going to do it because otherwise don't know, it sits there hanging in your brain,
Yeah.
living rent free. You know, sort of you're like, nah, let me just take all this.
Yeah, let's sacrifice a full day of binge watching something, or cocktails, or walks in the park. Let's sacrifice a whole day instead
Yeah,
of having to cut short the binge watching and the walks in the park,
that's right.
and the baby playing. We can do the rest of the week we can do full days of all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But this whole day, I'm gonna paint everything. I'm gonna patch everything. I'm gonna rewire everything all in one
That's
day.
the way it's got to be. Yeah, I wish. You see, I'm not handy like that as well. So, if I have any sort of problems like that, I'm not really a handy person. But my brother is a carpenter, and he's kind of good, and sort of like that. So if I have any like things like that, I have to like ring him up and promise him beer or something,
Sure.
sort of help me do things or things like that. But yeah, I'm pretty good on everything else. Sort of.
Yeah. Well, I use that as an example, but it could be anything. Like I
No,
might
I
have to.
know. Yeah,
I
it's
might
just
have to
life
take.
stuff.
I might have to do some online courses for
Right.
the Army National Guard. I might have to do that, and I'm just going to do them all in 5 hours straight. So
Yeah,
and then they're done. And
and then
she's like,
that's
"Are you
it.
going to sleep?" And I'm like, "I'll sleep tomorrow. Let me knock this out, and then we can just enjoy a whole rest of the week." And yeah,
Yeah.
things, stuff like that. So absolutely.
No, that's good. That is
Hmm.
good. It's
Yes.
that sort of mindset is a very filmmaker mindset as well. You're
Yeah.
like, because there's no point leaving those things till later. They only get worse. It doesn't get you go, yeah, it's next week. It's like next week comes quickly, and you find yourself cursing yourself because you
Oh yeah.
didn't deal with it before next. You're like, I could have done this last, and it would have been somehow it would have been easier, or somehow you would have understood the problem a little better, or
Hmm.
something.
Procrastination.
I know.
Procrastination.
We
I
all do it from time to time, but yeah.
To make matters worse, and I brought this up on the show before, my mother is so low tech. I wanted to go to her house. I wanted to install this software on her computer to where I can remote from my computer. I can remote into her computer,
Yes, right,
and I
right.
can fix up all the other stuff. And then I want to go over there and put, antivirus software, and I wanted to like fix her webcam. So, and this was years ago. Like, I think over the last year and a half, kept procrastinating. Oh no, me and the wife want to do this. The wife's pregnant now, so we got the wedding. We got this OBGYN. We got this, she's pregnant. This, that, and the other thing. And then the quarantine happens, and I think 2 weeks into the quarantine, I finally get over there, rubber gloves, mask, and finally fix all the stuff when it's inconvenient to do so. And had I not
Yeah.
procrastinated
Yeah.
over a year and a half, maybe 2 years, my
Yeah.
mother, God bless her. Hey, she's low tech. So be it. She's low tech. You can't,
Yeah.
you
We've
can't,
all got that mother, don't worry.
but you can't really force someone to like just learn everything in one day. But
No,
had I gone over there and done that, she would have probably been more equipped to start getting more familiar, and be higher tech now. But
sure. Yeah. And that's the problem, isn't it? There's that unforeseen thing that you're procrastinating makes it harder in a different way that you can't quite grasp until you've done it. And you're like,
exactly,
yeah, I didn't really help, that scenario, but because you didn't think of it too much, you're like, you didn't really realize its implication. Yeah. I mean, it's the same with everything.
absolutely. So moving forward, what would you say is your view on what we can expect as the new normal? What's your view of the new normal?
Um, well, stuff is. I don't think like social distancing is going away. I think people will still have to do that. I think one of the saddest things is we're not going to shake hands. We're not going to hug people. As much as we do. And I know that sounds silly, but for me, I work. Like for your children and stuff like that. People are going to be like, oh, your child is going to come home to your house at one day and say, yeah, and then this guy wanted to shake my hand. And I was like, okay, grandpa, because it will be an old thing people did,
Right.
like we don't,
Yeah.
in the future, we don't do that, so, because they go, well, it's hygiene. And you're like, I know. And it's a bit like, I mean, I sound like the guy that says, oh, it's a shame that people don't write letters anymore to people, like they don't mail stuff. There's something about posting a letter and receiving a letter. We don't do that anymore. We don't need to. We have the internet, and I'm not sort of standing in the way of progress there, but you got to admit we lose something in it. You're like, we lost a bit of our, I don't know, our personality as human beings, and hugging people and shaking hands with, I don't know. I'm quite a tactile person. I quite like that sort of
I
stuff.
do.
But I understand that people are no longer comfortable. I have people like giving me their elbow and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was in, and you're like, okay, the sentiment is still there. It's just, in 10 years time, my kids are going to be like, oh, it's shaking someone's hand or hugging someone that isn't your immediate family is going to seem very weird. They're like, and then he hugged me. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And you're like, in 2019, people used to do that all the time, but this is, and so that's going to change. I think that's probably the only thing that will change. The restaurants will open, but there'll be very much a sort of a sterilization, I think, happening going forward. Like people will wear gloves, people will wear masks a lot more. They'll go to the pubs and stuff like that, but I imagine a lot less social interaction, and I think that's a shame for young people. So the young people who are already glued to their phones way more than they should be. I think that's sad. I don't feel bad for me or you, or people of our age, because, well, we're glued to our cell phones like everybody is right now, but we knew a life where we weren't. We grew up without it,
Right.
so we lived that very cool life where we're like, actually, when we were young, we couldn't text the girl that we liked or send her a Facebook message because there was none of those things.
I gotta hurry up and get home and call her, bro. I gotta hurry up.
You have to be at your home
Yep.
phone. Your family would answer. Like you had no idea who was calling. You would know when you pick the phone up.
Oh, I gotta hurry up and get home and check my messages and see if she called me back, bro.
Right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's,
Yeah.
it's that sort of world. And our kids will never know that world. But
Mm-hmm.
as well as that, now it seems that they're losing another bit of badly needed social interaction. One of my things was, I said, for a friend of mine was, he was telling me about, I've told this story before, but he said he went to school with me and he had a child, and the child was 15 years old, I think. And he came in and I was talking to his dad and I said, oh, how's it going? And the dad said, oh, it's a big week, Simon. Maybe the first girlfriend. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, okay. And then the kid walks in the room and I'm like, hey, man. And his name was John. And I said, so what's happening? And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, I asked this girl out. He goes, do you want to see a picture of her? And I was like, sure, yeah. And he gets his phone out and shows me a picture. I was like, wow, very pretty, like very good. I said, so what happened? He goes, I asked her out. And I was like, good for you, and, not knowing how that story ends, right? So I was like, good for you. And he goes, oh, well, I don't know. And I was sort of confused. I was like, you don't know what happened? And he goes, no, well, she's read the message, but she hasn't replied to it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yep.
oh, you are right, of course. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, great. Like I tried to sort of hide my, sort of disdain. And I was like, okay. And then he left and I looked at his dad and I was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, I think every young man deserves the sort of heart-pounding moment of going up to a girl outside her locker or something and asking her out, not knowing what she's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
You do not know. And you have to, like any other human being, you've got to try and read their micro expressions. Is the girl, does she hate it? Does she like, you're gaining so much information from that face to face. And every young man and every young girl is of the same thing, sort of. I think it's a real shame. So what I was saying to him is that I think in schools now, acting lessons should be mandatory. Every kid should have to do acting lessons. Not because I think everybody should be an actor,
Okay.
because acting is just about the only subject you do where you have to keep eye contact with people, you have to read body language, you have to hear it, their tone of voice. You can't text it, you can't, there's a lot of body language and dynamic that happens with a face-to-face. We don't even realize we're doing it. And the kids, if they get sucked into phones before they get a chance to live, and socially interact, then I think that's a real shame.
I agree. And you raise a good point. There should be maybe summer camps, like, the summer camps that I went to, where it was out in, bumfucks
Mhm.
nowhere,
Yeah.
and cell phones go into a locker, and it's like, swimming, kayaking, and
Right.
hiking, and fire building with each other, really old school. And there
Yeah.
there should be, of course, get the cell phones back for like reaching out to the
Yeah.
parents, letting the parents know, because
Right.
unfortunately we can't stop evolution, we can't stop progress. And so me as a parent in 2025,
Yeah.
I'm going to want constant updates.
Of
Where's my kid, how he is, because since I have that tool, since I have that accessibility, I'm going to take advantage of it. But you're absolutely right. There has to be this raw.
Well, you're looking at it as a parent, which is the interesting thing, because you're like, you want the ability to know that your child is okay, is
Mhm,
healthy, is happy, or whatever the update is. But
mhm.
obviously, whilst you want that, we all want something better for our children, and you recognize its danger as well as like, yeah, you got to look up from the cell phone, sort of every now and then. Life is happening right beside you, sort of, but you will miss it if you. There's nothing more annoying, I think, than people. Watch. I've been with people who watch movies, and halfway through the movie, they're kind of, like they just go, I'm just replying to this message, so and you're like, you're missing a bit of the movie, like particularly if
Oh
it's a
yeah,
movie I've seen. I'm like, you're missing this bit, like this bit was important. It's
yeah.
and they're like, no, I'm watching, and what it is they're half watching, like, or that's why in the cinema you have popcorn. I've been to some cinemas where they give you, like they give you like full meals, like a burger or something. And I'm like, you can't really eat and watch a movie at the same time. Because you're kind of focusing on your food a little
Right.
bit.
Hmm.
But that's why popcorn was always a good thing, because you didn't really need to look at it to eat it.
Exactly.
So, but
Exactly.
you do with kind of a burger or fries or something a bit more, like a full meal. You have to look at it, a little
Yep.
bit. Well, people do. You don't have to, I suppose, but people do. And
Yep. Yep.
I don't like
Because
that.
there's those films, like No Easy Days, where
Right.
there might be a traitor, and in that 1 second thing, he grabs something and sneaks something in his pocket.
And the
And if
person misses it.
and if you missed it, then you're not going to know what the guy's up to in the second episode or the third
No.
episode, because he grabbed, like, the president's cell phone or something and slipped it in his pocket,
That's right.
because he
Or
and
even a
it,
big thing. Like I've been showing my dad, who hates everything I do, obviously. But sort of been showing my dad a trailer for something, and he'll be sort of half focusing on the thing, and then he'll look down to do something, and when he looks down, he like misses the explosion. And in my mind, I'm like,
of course.
Dad, do you know how much time and effort it costs to sort of, to make a car explode? You're like,
Yeah.
it's not a, and he's like, no, yeah, I saw it, sort of, and like, like he caught it more than he saw it, because they're not
Yeah.
focused. That's what's brilliant about the cinema. In the cinema, we have this black environment, this focused. People
Yep.
aren't at home. The phone isn't ringing because people can't have it
It's
on.
tunnel vision. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's good because it forces you to concentrate. Sort of. Whereas at home, people are like, "Yeah, I'm just getting up to get a snack or I'm going up to go to the bathroom." In the cinema, you feel bad going to the bathroom. You're like, "Ah, shit, I'm going to miss something." But you
Hmm.
feel like you're going to miss something. You
Hmm.
almost hurry there, hurry back, so you don't miss, I don't know, a key bit of the plot or something.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why, it's this big thing. They must, in the cinema, now they show, 40 different adverts or signs or something. Silence your cell phones, put them away.
Yeah,
Silence your
yeah,
cell phone, put them away. And then there's the M&M's commercial, uh,
that's right.
that parodies the whole "you ruin the movie with the cell phone." And then there's two more after that, and they're constantly
Mm.
telling people, put that freaking thing away, because it's not just you, it's everybody around you. And
But
there's that.
now they had to even expand those adverts a little bit, didn't they? Because they go, people turn your ringer off, put your
Yeah.
phone on silent. But then it was also distracting to see some guy 3 rows away from you just using his phone because it would light up, and it
Hmm.
would kind of catch your attention, So they have to be like, please don't use your phone, sort of, because you'd have somebody there texting, quite happily texting someone, in another cinema, probably ruining somebody else's, sort of movie. There's nothing more annoying to me than when I'm British. So when we go out for a drink, we have a bit of a sort of hey, you're out for a drink with me. I can't stand people that go out for a drink with you and then they spend all their time on their phone,
Right.
and you're like, and they're probably texting some other person in some other bar. And you're like, hey man, if have a drink with me, you're having a drink with me. You want to go have a drink with somebody else? Have a drink with somebody else. But,
And and there's something I do with my friends where I'll take my phone and put it face down, and then I'll take his phone, stack it on top like that, and then take another phone and just keep stacking it. And the bet is the first person to grab their phone buys the next round. Everything's maybe everything's gonna be split, but the first person that grabs their phone is gonna buy like an extra special round for the whole table.
Yeah,
and you could just see, and me, I don't care because I might have.
No, I don't care either. But I bet you've got friends that are like, you're like, that guy's gonna break. He can't stand it. Yeah, I've got
yeah.
Like that. His
And
name's Paul Tanter, my friend.
what's his name?
Paul Tanter.
Okay.
Fucking 30 seconds without a phone, he'd like sweating. Like he's got he's got an itch or something. Sort of. Yeah. I don't know how he survives without a phone ever.
Yeah.
If we go somewhere and we shoot somewhere and you're like, there's no Wi-Fi or no reception, it's like like forget it.
Well, you raised a good point. So there's been a number of film sets I'm on, and half the time producers, ADs might get frustrated. Other half, they're understanding. I'll ask for the Wi-Fi code because as an actor, there's a lot of downtime. As a crew member, there's not. But as an actor, you might film for 30 minutes and then you're sitting there for an hour and a half. I could be booking gigs. So as a professional actor, I kind of need my laptop hooked up to Wi-Fi because I'm going to sit here and just watch TV. I could be booking other gigs, and I need, and so I just hope most productions understand that. Now, however, at the same time, you're right. The only thing I should be looking at really is maybe the script, but also going back to procrastination and knocking everything out, making sure that if you have something on your plate, knock it out ahead of time so that I don't have that worry. So that's why at the bar, if I put my phone face down and do that bet, I don't care. I know I'm up unless, for example, when my wife was pregnant, nope, never, I would never play that game. But if my wife was with me, I just put it down.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's,
there's all these little circumstances, but I mean, absolutely. There's that time to put that freaking thing away.
I think that's what it is. It's not I'm not like you. I'm not really saying get rid of it, at all. I'm just saying, I think there's a time and a place. And what happens is that the technology is so available to people. It's so instant. It's in your pocket all the time that people think they have to do it all the time. And you're like, you should literally deliberately, like as if you're going to see a cinema movie. If you're having a meal in a restaurant with your missus, if you're having a drink with your friends, that's the time to put it down. Sort of, you can hold it up any other time, but I think any social exercise, or if you're going to see a movie, I don't know, I think you should be with the people that are immediately around you. Sort of just be with them just for that period. You pick it up then straight after that. But nowadays there's too much, there's too much mixing of that time with any other time.
Absolutely. And to go back to your fear that there won't be any touching, I don't think that might be a new semi-normal. I don't think that's going to last forever, ever. I don't think my kid is going to look at, my kid's 2 months old. I don't think when he's 5 or 6, 5 or 6 years from now, I don't think he's going to look at hugging and handshaking as a thing of the past but I definitely agree with you that is going to be, something that we have to take into consideration, at least for the next couple of years, at least a year and a half.
Well, there's this other stuff. Is the Me Too movement, the hashtag Me Too movement, so all this stuff, which is obviously very valid and stuff like this. I'm worried that some of our young people, who are like hey, you must always get consent, you know, for everything you do with a girl or a boy, whatever, you know, boy, girl. It makes kids nervous to be just genuinely honest about, I don't know, liking a girl, liking a boy. Do you know what I mean? Sort of because
Yeah.
there's this, like, you know, sort of we add a pressure that wasn't really there before. I mean, obviously it's there, and it's not aimed at 99% of good people who are just, you know, do you know what I mean? Sort of, it's aimed at the 1% of people who, to be honest, would ignore the advice anyway. That's why they are sexual abusers or rapists or things like that. You know, they're ignoring the advice anyway. So, but everybody else, they're like, hey, there's a way to be appropriate and there's a way not to be. And you're like, well, sure, but, you know, we still need, you know, to be brutally honest, we need boys to ask girls out. We need girls to ask boys out. We need, you know, we need people to go on dates. We need people to fall in love and get married and not be afraid of, you know, there's this thing of like, well, you shouldn't be inappropriate. And they go, there's a very confusing line for young people, I think, about what's appropriate. If I tell a girl I like her, you know, and they go, well, are you at work when you tell her? You're like, I'm at work. She doesn't work for me, but like, you know, I told her at work. And you're like, that's kind of sexual harassment, you know, at the workplace. And they're like, well, 90% of people, like, I swear, meet their significant other in an environment like a work, you know, like the office that they work in, or a movie that they're on together, or or so on and so forth. I mean, you know, that's how I think a lot of people meet. Maybe not 90%, maybe that's really high, but there's certainly a big number of people that's like, well, yeah, my mom and dad worked together at the bank or something, you know, or whatever it was, and that's how they met. And now there might be that fear or that, you know, anxiety that, oh, I'm doing something wrong, particularly if the girl goes, no, thank you, you know, sort of, and then you go, oh, damn, do I need to call a lawyer? And, you know, like,
Right.
I just asked her out. I mean, it was just, you know, I asked her out. Oh, was it a date you were asking out? Yes. Damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Date. Yeah. Yeah. Damn it.
I
Am I fired?
yeah, I can see where that extra tension, that extra fear of social interaction could come from, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think what it does is it does from what I've seen, it just basically got rid of most of the shitbags. It really did. And
It
you know, and I don't
was
think
good
any
to air it out. Yeah.
yeah, it really did weed out all the
For sure.
shitbags.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a 10-year-old kid, and now with the whole coronavirus and social
Well, yeah.
distancing, yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be some different, just natural, a natural new social structure, kind of like this natural way of
Yeah.
how the next generation interacts. But you know, I think that's the beauty, and then going back to modern technology and how people are meeting online as opposed to meeting. You know, I met my wife on Tinder, and we were
Well,
able to sift through the bullshit before we
how,
even met in person.
however, Glenn, without knowing too much about your situation, I'm willing to bet that it is neither yours nor her first date. As in, sorry,
No,
as in you had
throughout
relationships
life.
prior to getting together.
Oh yeah, a previous, yeah,
So,
absolutely. A previous girlfriend was a friend of a friend. Yep.
so what you had, rather than giving that, I don't mean to give those things any value or take away from your marriage to
Oh
your
no,
wife,
no,
but
no, no.
what I mean is you had an experience of not meeting online. You know that, in
Yes,
fact, that's how you grew up.
yes,
So you had the sort of normal experience of things, and then once you have the normal experience, you can tools. My problem is when the kids skip the growing pains, the thing that they should do, and go straight to Tinder. And they go, well, I've never, you know, I've had a relationship, so I'm just going to go to Tinder. And you're like, oh, well, you know, Tinder or any of those online dating apps, I mean, you know, they're fine or whatever,
yeah.
but maybe I wouldn't wish that they were children's first experience.
Absolutely. And now that I think about it, you know, like the kids have to go to the socials. They have to go to the dances. They have to grab a girl's hand
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, let's go dance." They have
Right.
to, you know, go to a bar, go to a club, you know, meet strangers. sporting events,
Yeah.
and you lock eyes with somebody, and you're like, hey, or you go over there and talk to them or whatever, or the
Or
girl
whatever.
says,
Yeah,
come here,
you say whatever you think you're supposed to say. I don't know.
yeah,
You know what? We all figured it out before with the internet, before Tinder. But you and I and everybody that's our generation and everyone that came before us. You know what? We all figured it out. So we all got married. We all had babies. We all, the world was sort of spinning. Now, I'm not saying it was perfect. I mean, but I'm not sure a Tinder-led social distanced world is going to be any more perfect than this. There just might be. I don't know. I see it as dehumanizing a little bit sometimes.
yeah.
So,
We can't forget about the girl next door. I mean,
right.
that's been the love story. That's been, the cliche, but it's been a true story for 100 years.
Exactly. And the boy getting his heart broken by the girl next door is kind of almost the rite of passage.
Right.
And when the real love of your life comes, no matter how you met her through Tinder, it doesn't really matter how it happens later.
Mm-hmm.
You're basing your decisions on real experience. You know what I mean? Sort of,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't had to do it. You haven't had to do it like that. I mean, I don't mind any of those things for the purposes of meeting people. Obviously, it's great. Tinder is everyone wants to meet people. That's I get it, or whatever. Sort of whatever site you use. But if it was, my only objection would be if it was your child's first way of doing stuff, and you're like, I know it's an app for dating, but I think when you're 15, you don't need an app for dating. I think or that you do you know what I mean. I don't think you should be. That's the way you should do it. I think it should be something based in, like you say, seeing somebody across a room.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that works, but I don't. And nobody can tell you how that works, and yet everybody figures it out somehow.
Well,
Everybody falls in love.
well,
Organic, no matter how much they try or don't try.
absolutely, because me and the wife still had to meet in person, and I had gone on some Tinder date. I went on some Tinder dates before, and they were awkward, or they were like
All right,
completely outrageous.
like but you see, that's your experience. You're like, you go on the date, and you're like, in 30 seconds, I'm sure you in your mind, you're like, right, well, this was a waste of time.
Right.
And that's fine. You've got the experience, on your side to say, I'm not going to bother with this because this is just a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and similarly with your wife, she'll have the same thing of like, that's not the guy for me. That's not the guy. Oh, actually, this is the guy for me. It's engaging. You still actually have to do that meet and see if there's that magic spark, and I don't think unfortunately an app or any of this modern technology can replace that. And that's my worry, is that some people will suggest that it is.
Well, that's up to us as parents. That's up to us to say, we can filter the device we give them. So,
but think of this, Glenn. When you asked your first girl out at school or whatever, your mom and dad wasn't monitoring who it was or where it was.
That's the in-person thing. Yeah.
So it has to be, in order for, I think, a kid to grow, they have to at some point be given freedom to make a bad choice, without monitoring. I mean, that's the problem with kids, is if they're chatting with somebody online or whatever, they know a parent can monitor it, you can see it. And obviously you're seeing it because you want to keep them safe, obviously. However, all of your growing, you probably did outside of your parents' view. We all had our first cigarette, our first beer when our parents weren't around, because
Absolutely.
it's you asked the first girl out without your mom watching over you, you wouldn't have done it if she was right there.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, there's a balance to strike, and I don't know what the balance is. I don't have the answer. All I have is parents are going, well, I can see what my child is doing. It's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't, not all the time. There are times that, a kid kind of has to strike out on their own. And that's important. That's an important part of growing up in the world, but as a parent, you're like, well, I just want, I don't mind them meeting a boy or a girl, I just want to make sure it's safe, or I want to make sure it's, it's right, or they're not drinking or doing drugs, or they're doing, and you're like, well, you're not going to stop kids being kids, unfortunately. They'll fight. And believe me, if you think you will, they will find a way around the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we were young. Hey, I'm going to my friend's house, and your mom had no way to tell where you were. because your friend was at your house, you were at his house, and actually you were both in a park, drinking a bottle of wine. You'd somehow, whatever.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You
I did
found a
that.
way around it, and kids will find a way around this if they want to. They've got nothing but time and energy.
Good luck with that, because I'm probably going to end up having my kid chipped with a device on my phone, because knowing what I did, man.
That's the problem.
And this kid, this kid's a lady killer already. This kid's a lady killer. This kid's like pretty good looking already. He's only 2 months old. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to get him chipped.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I haven't got any of the answers, Glenn. Unfortunately, these are all just more problems, I'm afraid.
Right. Exactly. If you had 1 point to close out for our viewers, what would that be?
Keep safe in the lockdown, but don't let it keep you down. I think everybody should be working on something. And I mean working as well. I don't mean just seeing family. I think part of being healthy in your head sort of is being productive. Whatever job you do, I think there's people can be doing it. If they want to do a home renovation DIY project, I think people should be doing something creatively productive, whatever that means for each individual. If you learn to play the guitar and you haven't picked a guitar up for 10 years, pick it up again. Sort of because you actually, at the end of the day, it's like going for a big long walk or a jog. You hate the process, and as soon as you've done it, you're like, I'm glad I did that. Sort of, I feel better. And you're like, and it just, but the lockdown tempts people to not do that. It tempts people to not get dressed in the morning. Like, get dressed. Put your clothes on, as if you're going out to meet people. Get dressed. You feel better having done it. You hang around in your pajamas all day, you feel lazy because you are. It's an effect on your own mind, and you're like, well, why am I getting dressed? I've got nobody to see. Just get dressed anyway. Sort of make your bed. Why? I'm gonna just do it. Sort of. It's good practice, and you feel better for doing it, and everybody knows you feel better for doing it. So.
Yeah, I agree, because that'll turn into a habit after the quarantine.
Oh, there you go. And it's like, those are bad habits, to do. And everybody, it's the same solution for everyone. As soon as people get up and do something, they tell you they feel better. And they're like, so just go do it.
You know it. Well, I know you have quite a bit to plug, but any plugs, links, socials you want to put out there?
Just one at the moment. Age of the Living Dead, Amazon Prime. That's the one I'm playing. Because it's just there. And we're just wrapped season 2, so it feels like a good time to say it.
Awesome. Age of the Living Dead. Simon Phillips, thank you so much. This has been a meaty one. It's like almost an hour and a half. So that's
my
fantastic.
God, I'm so sorry. I know we had a bit of but it flowed quite well.
Absolutely. And it was a blast. And I have no time limit. If it's a good one and it goes 3 hours, I'm not going to stop it.
Yeah.
But Simon Phillips, Age of the Living Dead, No Easy Days, White Collar Dystopia, White Collar Hooligans. I want to check those out. I actually like those kind of storylines. Those.
Good. Well then, there's lots of them there. And send me some of your stuff then that you were talking about for yours, and I'll have a look.
Absolutely. But to my viewers out there, like, subscribe, share, comment. Click all the links below for Simon's stuff, and ring that bell for notifications, and check us out next time.